based on some critical comments I received on the last video, where some people took the fact that he was 2 years in the NFL in terms of the statistics and maybe said I had played out all those seasons and those were the only two examples where he'd been successful. And to be honest with you, I really hate hypothetical situations. I mean, at the end of the day, if you're going to make a comment like that, you own the game. You need to start it up yourself and prove that I've manipulated the gameplay, because clearly in this example I haven't. As you see, Nate Hardestop is the key player in the opening sequence here. Now, one thing I don't like about this is the game really needs to understand that he's not a good player. He's rated 38, and they should game plan around the receiving core a lot more than they do. Now, the first thing I do bring up here is the fact that I'll go in and show you on his roster he has no career statistics. And again, that just goes back to my point there, receiving, blocking, rushing, everything is clean across the board. That 2 years experience was just an error on my part creating the player. Now, what I'm doing in this situation is giving the Cardinals as many offensive possessions as I can, and yes, something rather odd does happen during the course of this gameplay, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. So we'll watch right here with the return, and then I believe we'll see one offensive play before we see a Nate Hardestop play. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the prior videos that I think I should get out, other than the fact is, like I said, I think the computer should be smart enough to game plan around its worst player not having the ball, but to me, he is effective on the ground game. And when I think about what I said before in terms of I don't have a baseline for what other players would play at a position, you know, I do have a baseline for what a weak running back should do, and he certainly shouldn't get a handoff, truck through a linebacker, drag a defensive tackle and safety down the field like he just did. And here you're going to see a player with no stiff arm, with no trucking, with no strength, plow through three Bears defenders. And it's just not something he's built to do. And he should not be doing it. But this game does not understand its own rating system. It's extremely flawed. And a huge part of the issue is when you can't create a weak player that really is weak, then the strength players aren't going to excel. Your elite guys are not going to excel in this game because there's no gray area. From the worst player to the best player, at times they can all play the same. And to me, that's what makes Madden not a simulation, and really ultimately not even fun, because I can't take guys off the street, free agents, really people, if you think about it, like Peyton Hillis, Pierre Garçon. I mean, name any team in the NFL and you can probably have a handful of 5 guys that will be mediocre. And you don't have their individualities. And here I want to show Hunter Hillermeyer being blocked up by Nate Hardestop. And to me, he should not be able to block anyone. He has 12 strength. Momentum isn't an issue. He has actually anti-momentum. That's really not a term, but he should have been ran over there, not being able to block. But hey, you know, 160 pounds and 12 strength, what do you expect? But to get back to my point, without, you know, that gray area the players have, you're not going to have competitive games because there's no separation between the best and the worst. So that means whatever team you pick, you're not going to get an individualized experience. You're going to get the same gameplay experience over and over. That was a Nate Hardestop run. This is Tim Hightower as he goes in for the touchdown. But again, on that drive, we did see good blocking out of Hardestop and 2 good runs. So it's not that he was ineffective. Another point, obviously, he doesn't have any carrying. So the fact that he's blowing through these tackles and not fumbling the ball is something that I question. Now, getting back to my original point in terms of showing all this gameplay, I don't do this because, well, up at least until this point, it's probably a little bit boring for you as a viewer as we close in on about 4.5 minutes. I don't want to make boring videos. So for me to be able to clip down 2 plays and show them to you as I go into a punt here makes it a lot more, you know, well, a lot less time consuming and a lot easier for you to watch, and basically gets to the point. I don't want to get into the habit of making 15-minute extended videos to prove that I'm not, you know, falsifying gameplay. But here we go back with the Cardinals on offense, and this is Hightower back in the game. And you'll see a wide open pass here out to the receiver, and of course that's because the game flow selected a zone defense, which is just terrible in all assets of Madden. And really this 15 minutes, really almost a full half, does have its own issues. Now here I call a timeout, and that's to hopefully get Hard to Stop back in the game because Hightower was still in. I'm trying to prevent him from being spelled as much as possible, and here you can see that does work. Hard to Stop does come back in. Here you see a run out, runs through one defender, pulls another defender forward. And this, again, the Bears defense, to me, a cornerback, and then that's Brian Urlacher that gets strung along. These are techniques that he should not be using, that he really should not be able to perform. And to me, this isn't him being a poor example at running back. This is him being a very dependable and very good running back. And at the end of this game, well, at the end of this half, you're going to see a pretty solid stat line in terms of what he brought to the table as a pass out of bounds here from Matt Leinart. And yes, I haven't updated my rosters. I just don't spend enough time with this game to even bother because, like I said, when you do things like this, which to me is a lot more telling in terms of how poor this game is in terms of representation of football, it really doesn't make it any fun for me. I mean, Peyton Manning doesn't play like Peyton Manning. Dallas Clark doesn't play like Dallas Clark. Any player is capable, as you see here, of being successful. I mean, he just drug two players into the end zone with absolutely zero ability to do this. I mean, you see the technique, very similar to Adrian Peterson, very similar to a fullback. There's no difference in these players fundamentally in how they play in this game. And without that change, you're never going to have simulation football. And as I've said before, I feel Madden is ADD football. I feel like these animations ruin the game. And I feel like the game is made this way because EA knows they have to make a product that has this type of flash and substance to it because, you know, for lack of well, I guess for just being blunt, a lot of kids purchase this game, and kids don't want to become involved in defensive struggles. They want to throw every down. They want every play to be a touchdown. And Madden has really not catered toward, in my opinion, adults in the longest time. And not that any other game company has, but it's particularly clear with the innovations they've made in this game to draw away from the defense and make the offense much restricted in terms of how they can play. And no difference between any of these players as I accidentally try to complete a pass here instead of going for the punt. I think it really shows a clear and concise view of what EA Sports thinks their market is. And I think it's at least at some point need to be made clear to them through their sales, hopefully this year, that their market is an adult group that has grown up with this product and doesn't want a game that plays like this, that doesn't care about how realistic it looks, but how realistic it plays. Says the Cardinals get the ball back, and they're going to be on their goal line, obviously facilitating some runs during the second half being started here. Hard to Stop is back in the game, and again we'll see some more production out of him as he hits the gap, does a juke move, and again dragging two tacklers. That's 5 rushes for 47 yards. And now, as I said before, if somebody wants to question this, you know, do your own experiment. Show me that for you he didn't do any of this, that he went, you know, 5 attempts, -3 yards, and fumbled twice, which is what I really expect to see out of a player built this poorly, but we don't. He's now in as the game. He's now in as a back, and he's going to go out here and catch a pass, truck through, and continue to fall forward. Falling forward is a big thing for me. He has no weight. Sure, he has momentum, but he has no strength. He should not be pushing defenders forward unless he's being aided by an offensive player from behind in terms of going down, and it's just not something that we ever see, and I think he's been spelled by Hightower again, which is the case, and they're going to go and complete a pass. And you can just see consistently with this gameplay how jerky and animation-driven it is, and certainly All-Pro Football is also another animation-driven game, but it's not clearly as jaded and jagged as a feel that you get from Madden. I mean, to me, Madden is a very jerky game in terms of its animations. It really feels like it has a problem with the terms of the limitations it has, and it's no more clear than when looking at some of this gameplay for an extended period of time really how limited these players are in terms of their movements, because it looks so unnatural to watch this stuff. Even in these slow motion up close shots that I'm kind of trying to speed through for the sake of time, you really can see when you take a look at this game in its entirety how really robotic and unnatural these players act, even right down to the throwing motions. And I'll do a video on the throwing motions later, but certainly it's something that they've talked a lot about in terms of realism, and I just don't see being translated onto the field the way they say it is. Hightower is still in the game. And I believe they're going to get a long pass reception here. The time in the pocket is amazing. And what's funny about this pass completion is Larry Fitzgerald does a sideline catch, but then immediately begins to truck. And there's no one in front of him that he should need to be concerned with trucking except the referee. So I believe there's a black Nate Hard-to-Stop on the sideline there if you look real close. But here you can see the sideline catch and then just a random trucking almost for the referee. And again, that just goes back to what I was talking about before with how unnatural this game appears and looks. And certainly now it looks like Tim Hightower is still in the game. I believe the next play I'm going to call a timeout to try to get Hard-to-Stop back in. And actually they get an injury, and I'm actually going to rely on the 2-minute warning here to bring Hard-to-Stop back in. As you can see, there's Hightower still in the game. Again, I apologize for some of you that probably thinks this is rather boring, but again, I guess maybe felt a little vindication. That's actually Hard-to-Stop. I was incorrect there as he goes and breaks a few tackles. At the 2-minute warning, you can see here 47 yards, 9.4 average, and a touchdown. Again, not conducive of the way this player was built. And again, if you can't build the weakest player, then the strongest players aren't going to matter. So I believe he's going to get a touchdown here on the next play or two. I know he does end with 2 touchdowns. I hate to ruin the dramatics of it, but actually no, this is a pass to Larry Fitz. No, it's actually a pass to Steve Breaston, and he gets stopped short, I believe, on 4th down. They have a touchdown pass to Larry Fitzgerald. They may kick a field goal. No, they go for it. And you can see actually Hard-to-Stop is in the game. And this is the touchdown pass to Fitzgerald in the middle of the end zone. So now as they kick their extra point to go up 21-0, I decide with time being restricted that once I get the ball back, I'm going to actually call for a fair catch here. Once I get the ball back, I'm going to intentionally kick a field goal, and which is clearly not going to be good because it's going to be about a 97-yarder, to give them the ball back at around the 10-yard line to see if we can get some more goal line carries out of Hard-to-Stop. Now, for whatever reason, when I select this field goal, it's 111 yards. I really don't even give it a good attempt. This is ruled a safety, and I'm sure someone has a reason why, but to me, I don't understand why that would be a safety. I'm sure there's a reason. I don't know if it involves the ball not getting to midfield, whatever the case is going to be, but to me, I've never seen a missed field goal attempt turn into a safety in all my years of watching and playing football. So now the Cardinals get back on offense, now up 23-0 after the mysterious safety, and this is actually Hard-to-Stop back in the game, being pretty good blocking. You couldn't see there. You might want to rewind it. He actually goes up and ties up a linebacker again from getting over in the pocket. And again, not something I would expect to see. Very well-rounded player. Again, going through all these plays, you can see he's been very productive. He's caught a pass. He's ran very well. He's broken tackles. He's blocked very, very productively since we saw it with Hunter Hillmeyer and then again out in the flat. So we're seeing a well-rounded, balanced running back, which we really should not see. And here he is again. This is actually a 15-yard face mask, which takes away from about another 6 or 7-yard run he had when Urlacher uses the face mask. And not that that matters, but certainly it impacts the stats you'll see later on and being a little bit less impressive. So Breaston gets stopped here at the 1, and at this point I do have an awkward edit because my video camera my camera ran out of memory card space. So you're going to see essentially we jump to a play that's already kind of in the middle here, and all I really can do is just resume the game. I had called a timeout to try to change the card, but it didn't work because I'd already used a timeout. But you're going to see exactly what happens here in this play. It's a pitch out. He trucks through a cornerback and gets into the end zone for another touchdown, and they'll kick another extra point. And at this point, you know, he scored 2 touchdowns now and been, again, extremely productive. Some yards got taken back on that 15-yard face mask, so keep that in mind when we take a look at his final statistics here in just a moment. Right now, though, up until this point, he has been the most viable offensive threat that they've had in this 30-0 lead they have. As I originally said, I don't understand why they would continue to, really place him in the heart of this offense, as poor as a player as he is designed. So when we go in and look at his statistics here, you'll see, again, very competent numbers. There you see the yardage. is actually 59, 7.3 per carry, 2 touchdowns, 27 yards after the first hit, and 2 broken tackles. 27 yards after the first hit for a player with no strength.